Hey, so in preparation for the 9 to 5 game jam, I just wanted to quickly cover the basics of how you could use Excel's Visual Basic in order to program a game in Excel. I think that Excel will probably be the best avenue for anyone who has a programming background to make a game in. Unlike PowerPoint, which could be made or used to make a text-based adventure where it will go to a different slide based on what option you pick. For most other things like maybe 2D platformers or like exploration games, or even like other stuff like chess, I think that Excel will probably be the best because it's got a lot of like the small stuff, like for example, I don't know why I did that. Stuff like the cells can be used as pixels, and using Visual Basic, you can actually do stuff like get keyboard presses and have a update loop. It's what I'm going to be using personally, and if anyone is a programmer, then I highly recommend that you use it. However, the downside is that you have to learn how to use Visual Basic and Excel in general, because I have a hate-hate relationship with this program. But it's probably the best option for anyone who wants to like do traditional programming. So first, how do you actually access the developer tab, which is how you use Visual Basic and macros. So to actually get this tab, you need to go to File, Options, and it'll bring up Excel options here. You go down to Customize Ribbon, and then this developer tab here will be unchecked, so you just need to check it, and then restart Excel and create a new project. Now you might get like a bunch of messages that sort of warn about only trusting macros from like reliable sources, because with Visual Basic you actually can access like system level files, so someone who has malicious intent could like seriously mess up your computer. But so long as you don't do like any roulette games where it's like if you guess correctly you win, but if you don't it'll delete system32, so long as you don't make or download any things like that, or you should be good, or like make them yourself, you should be good. Now, how to actually make something. So by clicking on Visual Basic, you'll bring up this tab here. As you can see, there's not really much on it. So in order to actually get something to start working on, we want to click the Insert button, and then it'll do this little drop-down menu. Now, there's tons of different options you can do, like there's a scroll bar, which could maybe be used for like something. There's also like labels, checkboxes, an option button, stuff like that, but pretty much just go to button form control. And then you'll be prompted to draw a button, and then you'll then need to like sort of set the macro name. It can be whatever you want, so that's perfectly fine. So let's do new. And then it'll bring you to this menu. Yours will probably look like this, and the actual background will look very different to mine. There isn't sort of like a dark mode option. The closest you can do is if you go to Tools, Options, and then if you go to Editing Format, this is where you can change all of the code colors here. And if you just change the background to black and then the foreground to something, you'll be able to sort of customize it until you can get a dark mode or however you want it to look. You can also change the font, the size of the font, and the margin indicator bar, and it'll sort of like preview what it looks like here. So this is one of the main like issues you will encounter, where whenever you try and save a workbook with a macro, you'll get this message. If you just click save normally, I don't believe it will actually save. Oh, good. Oh, but there might be some like you might encounter some issues, and that sort of has to do with the file suffix. So if I do let's say if I make a change, yeah, it will get this again. Click the X, and then it'll bring up this. You can see I have the book here. Now, what you will want to do is you want to save it as a Excel macro-enabled workbook. And as you'll see here, these are the other workbooks that I was testing with. So then if I do save, whenever I make a change, it'll save perfect. It'll save properly. So now that I've sort of covered the basics of how to get a project up and running, I just wanted to sort of run you through how to make just like a basic, like let's say if I have a second sheet, where let's rename it here to game sheet. Say if I had the sheet here, and then whenever the game's running, just so the player knows that everything's working fine, I want these 6 rows to change color to red and then change back to white. Now, first, let's sort of do one small change, which is, as you'll know, these are the cells are currently in the shape of rectangles. And if you sort of look at the row height, you'll see it's 15, and then if we look at the row of the column width, it's 8. So if I change the width to 15, it's going to be a lot longer. So in order to get like nice square cells, there's sort of 2 sizes you can go. You can do sort of a bit, you can sort of go medium, where for the width you'll want to set it to 5, and then for the height you'll want to set it to 25. You'll get like nice, like reasonably sizable cells, but if you want it a bit smaller, you can change the width to 1 and the height to 10. And you'll get like nice small little pixels. I'm going to go with this one just so it's a bit easier to look at. And again, so I want to change so first I want a button. So when I click this button, it'll go to game sheet. And then while the game is running, these 8 pixels will blink just so the player knows everything's running fine. Now, first, what we'll also do is we'll quickly create a button called quit. We'll go new. And essentially, what we'll do in modules is if we want to rename a module, we go down to this tab here and we just change it to whatever we want it to be called. So I'll do quit. As you can see in the modules tab, it's changed. Now, again, as you will see over here, even though on Excel, these are called, like it's called game sheet and sheet 1 over here, this is named correctly, but this is still called sheet 2. To quickly change that, we just go up here and go game sheet, and now the sheet in the VBA project tab is changed. Now this is important because whenever you want to change sheets, I don't know exactly whether it uses like the actual, like the Excel name or the name it uses in here, but it's good just to keep things consistent, and so it looks nice and tidy in your project browser. So again, this is where we do all of the button clicks. So this is when the game will essentially start. So first, we are going to need some variables. Now, I think this is like probably like you could say this is based off Python. Maybe it's closest like either Python or Lua. They're both like pretty good examples because there's no like semicolons and things that like a lot of the syntaxes are very like non-programmer friendly. So if you don't program, it'll be a lot easier to read. So you'll need, like, to set variables, you'll need to do set, let's do, we're going to do name all variables associated to the, like, blinking cells. We're going to call LED, so we're going to call LED bool. So this is the boolean to see if it's on or off, and we're going to make it equal to false. And as you'll see there, VBA is quite good at, like, sort of auto, like, completing syntax. But if I click run, I'll get a compile error, which is one of the cool things about this, is that whenever you like, all of the time, whenever you're writing stuff, it may seem fine, but then when you go to actually run it, it will cause an error. Like, sometimes it'll be, like, convenient and say, hey, it's what run, but other times it'll just say, yep, everything's good, and then only throw an error when you try and run it. So first, to declare variables in VBA, you need to declare them. You can declare them locally. So if I go down here, I can do dim LED bool as boolean, and then when I try and run it, it should work. Oh, that's because it's not an object. And there we go. So that worked fine. But if we don't want it to be if we want it to be global, what we can do is we can just remove this here and paste it here, and instead of dim, we can just do private LED bool as boolean. And one handy neat trick is when you define variables like this, it'll automatically default to, like, the sort of nulls, it'll have a default state. So for bools, that's false. For integers, that's 0, and for strings, it's just an empty string. So what we're going to do is we're also just like another example, we're going to set up a private LED timer as integer, so that will be fine. And then we're going to need, like, a reference to which cells we want to modify. So we're going to do private LED range as range. So this is one of the most common objects you'll be using. And by objects, it's essentially like, sort of like, if you know what a class is, like, a class is a type of object, but essentially an object will contain functionality. So for range, it'll have a bunch of methods tied to it that allow you to manipulate the cells you've defined. Now, to actually like, instantiate a object in VBA, you'll need to do set LED range to whatever. So we're going to give it a reference to what we want, like, which cells we want targeted. So if we alt tab back, it's A1 to C2. So to do that, we're going to do range bracket, comma, A1 colon C2, quotation and close bracket. And there we go. But first, actually, I'm getting a bit ahead of myself. What we'll need to do is we'll need to actually go to the game sheet. So the button for button click 1 is in just sheet 1. So to actually change sheets, what you'll do is you'll go sheets, bracket, quotation, and then whatever you want the sheet, whatever the sheet's name is that you want to go to. So we're going to game sheet dot activate, and so now any further lines of code that relate to a sheet will be made on that sheet, and it'll also take us to said sheet, which is useful. So now that we've set all of our variables up, again, basic data types will have a auto default, but objects won't. So now that we've got everything set up, we're going to need a update method, or subroutine as they're called in vKey. So to do that, we're just going to do update, and then do sub update, and then there we go. And also, if you check up here, you'll see what procedure we're on. So we're currently in update, but if we click here, we're in button click. If we click up here, we're in declarations. Not too sure what this does, but it's not really anything to worry about just yet. So let's do a basic update loop. So we're going to do dim, what is it? Game loop as Boolean. So it'll auto default to false. So we're going to do until game loop is equal to true. This is essentially how you do a equivalence operator. You don't do double equal signs, you just do that. It's done. What you're gonna do. And then to actually close the loop, you just do loop. So this will essentially loop until game loop is set to false. And again, because these are classified as subroutines, not methods, so you can have multiple subroutines running at the same time. So we don't actually need to check if we want to break out of this loop. So what we could do is we can do sub quit game. This will actually probably need to be globally accessible. So if I just quickly copy this here, yep, I know. If I just copy this here and make it private. If it's private, then anything in here will be able to access it, but for example, quit won't, so I'll just change it to public. And then if we want to while this game loop is running, if another if another subroutine changes this to false, next time this subroutine executes, it'll the game loop will be switched to true, so then it'll end, which is quite handy. So now basic stuff. So let's do blinker, and then down here we'll do sub blinker, which is where we'll do all the stuff. Now, one really important thing is whenever you do a loop, or essentially whenever you want to have a not quite infinite loop, but essentially something that will keep on looping until something externally is changed. If you do it as is, your Excel will crash. And it'll essentially, your code won't work. I don't know the specifics, but my best guess is that essentially it'll only do this and basically nothing else, which will then sort of cause your whole application to freak out and then just commit seppuku. So whenever you want to have a game loop, what you'll need to do is you'll need to quickly add do events. This will essentially mean that your game loop will work perfectly fine. So then down here, we're going to do if LED timer is greater than or equal to 10, and then in order to break out of a if statement, we just do end if. So if LED is, what is LED? LED ball is equal to true. I'm just going to quickly copy some code just so, what's it called? The whole tutorial isn't me just typing. Yeah. So I'm going to quickly copy that. Where is it? I'm also going to quickly change the name slightly. Alright. So yeah, essentially, if LED timer is greater than or equal to 10, it'll change it to red, and this is essentially how you change like the color of cells. So whenever you're like rendering, like quote unquote rendering pixels, this is how you'll do it. So we change it to red. If not, then we'll change it to, let's actually change that to white. Is this gonna work? Yeah, that's what I thought. So yeah, this will just change it to like, this will change it to whites instead of like just the basic opacity, but that shouldn't be too far. That shouldn't like be too much of an issue. Yeah, so this will essentially run, but in order to sort of make it so it'll only execute a certain amount of times, we're going to implement ACE. We're going to sort of use the inbuilt sleep method. Now, to actually access this, it's a bit complicated. I'm not sure if the window, like the Microsoft suite, will work on stuff like Linux or Apple, but if it does, this will almost definitely not work for you. I'm pretty sure this will only work for Windows users. If you do some Googling, you might be able to find out what the equivalent is, but I mean, if you use Linux, you're probably a better programmer than me. So in order to actually import the sleep method, it's a bit complicated. So you need to do declare PtrSafe sub sleep lib kernel 32 ByVal dwMilliseconds as long. Actually, you did declate, so it's declare. So this will allow you to use the sleep function. It's a bit complicated, and whenever you want to import something, let's also just change this to public so anything can use it. If you want to import something, it's a bit like to actually import libraries, it's a bit like weird, but it may look scary, but it's, if you like sort of know syntax, it's essentially just it sort of makes sense, but you don't need to worry about it too much. Just if you want to use like sleep, this is how you do it. And then to activate it, let's do, so every few seconds we'll sleep for 50 milliseconds. And then if we go back over to here, and if we click this button, say compiler, oh yeah, bad. Yep, that's fine. Yep. So yeah, there we go. Now it's blinking. And in order to do the quit subroutine, since over here we made game loop public, it means that any module will be able to alter the value of this variable. So we can just do game loop is equal to true, and then we just want to change it back to the sheet we were just on before. So under here we're going to do sheets sheet1.active. So if we save, go down here, click it, yep, there we go, everything's working. And then if you click this, it goes back here and we check, it's not running anymore. So yeah, this is essentially how you would make a basic game loop. And in order to quit out of it, you can just make a easy button. So that's all well and good being able to create a blinker, but since we need to make a game, we're going to need some way for the player to actually interface with the game loop. To do that, we're going to need input. Now, we could have like buttons like this, where we have like 4 buttons for up, down, left, right, and stuff like that. But that's cringe. We can do better. We can get the player's input from their keyboard presses. Now, To do that, it's actually a lot simpler than you may think. Actually figuring out how was a bit of a pain in the ass, but once you actually know how to do it, it's pretty easy. So first, let's take this cell right here. So L8. Let's go back into our IED, or IDE rather. And we're gonna I'm gonna kill two birds with one stone. So I want a class that's essentially gonna handle all of this for me. So I don't have to have it in my main loop, but I can essentially instantiate it anywhere I want. Now, obviously, you would probably want to have like the control scheme as a module rather. Sorry, but just for like demonstration purposes, I'm going to make this into a class, just so you know how to make a class if you want. So what we're going to do is we're going to do insert class module. It's going to create a class here. We're going to do control process. Boom. So this is our class. So we have the option explicit up here, and this is where we do all of our class stuff. Now for properties, it's a bit unique. I won't go into it too much, but there's a good video that you can watch. This one, where it talks about how to set up getters and setters using properties. As you can see here, I'll be sure to link it, as well as this one. It's pretty long. It's mainly for what's it called? Actually, like creating macros that help you organize spreadsheets
because we have other things
easier. But since we're making a game, most of this is like not that useful, but it is good to like have a quick breeze through, especially like the debugging section and the expressions and variables and procedures and functions. Like both of those are quite useful. But if you want to know more about like how to make like classes with properties, this is watch this video here. But since like we don't really want any like inherent like changeable properties, we're not going to bother with them. So instead, what we're going to do is we're going to do private debug range as range, and essentially what we're going to do here is this range here, we're going to have be like our player cell. So we're going to we want this cell to move up, down, left, and right. So how do we do that? Well, in our main module, what we're going to do is we're going to import something else. So we're going to do public declare PtrSafe function get a sync key state lib user 32 dot dill by we're gonna do brackets ByVal the key as long as integer. Fuck. Alright. What did I do wrong? I can't tell what I did wrong, but this seems to be working, so yeah. I probably spelled it wrong somewhere. Both of these I'll include just so you don't have to like worry about accidentally misspelling. Again, this, you might have some issues, especially if you're on a different operating system. But this should work. Essentially, like, if you're wondering, this is like we're getting, like this is the actual key presses, and this is like the actual user in like our Windows 32 file, which is essentially like where our operating system is. It's like essentially reading the raw keyboard inputs, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, so essentially this is what we need to import. And again, making sure it's public so everything can access it. All right, and then now what we're going to do is we're going to go back into control processor because we now have it. And then we're going to create a couple of subroutines. We're going to go public sub set game keys. So this is where we actually will set the game keys. Do public sub check keys. This is again checking. This is where we check for input, and then public sub reset keys. And essentially, the reason why we need to reset them is because we're essentially like, I don't know these like exact specifics, but we're sort of like hijacking the user's keyboard and saying like, hey, like anytime you press this key, it's only going to be like used for this, like for like this for like our purposes here. So we need to like reset them again. So to actually like assign the keys, what we need to do here is we need to do application dot on key, and then as you can see, key as string, so we need to give it a string. So we're going to go I'm pretty sure like the because what we're doing here is we're using like sort of a like the key we're giving it here, we're putting in brackets because we don't want to actually give it the exact like string that our system uses to like recognize a certain key. We just want to give like the key name. We don't want to give key U32 or something. So we're going to do up. So this is for the up arrow, and then we're going to map it to a procedure, and we're just going to map it to nothing. Now, if you wanted to, you could like have it so anytime you pressed up, it would do a procedure, but we're not going to. Because there might be times where we don't want to check for key presses. We just want to say, hey, is like, hey, during like this specific time, has the user pressed up? If so, we're going to do something with it. That's going to come later. So I'm just going to quickly go over to and copy all these in. So we're essentially like in like Excel, we're essentially removing the functionality of the arrow keys. And also while we're here, I'm just going to quickly do set debug range. This is my previous testing. What are we going to set it as? We're going to set it as L8. So we go back here, we're going to do L8. There we go. So essentially it's going to change this little thing here to red. Perfect. All right, now what we're going to do is we're going to just quickly, we're going to reset. So once we're done, we're going to come back in here and say, hey, these can go back to whatever they were bound to before. So Excel is nice and happy, and we're also going to do debug underscore range dot clear. This will essentially clear whatever like cell our quote unquote player is at, so it's not colored, just so like whenever we start the game again, we don't have the player we don't have like essentially two cells that are colored the same color as we want our player to be. All right, so now the meat of it. So we're going to do, so this is where we actually check for the keys. There is something else you can do, where if you only want it to register an input once, so if the user presses a key, we only want the first key press. What we can do is we can set a int. We can do private, what is it? So let's do up. So previous up state as integer. Again, this will auto default to 0. So essentially, whenever we press it, press a key, we can just do like we can check to see if this is anything but 0, and or to check if this is 0, and if it is 0, then that means we haven't pressed the key before, and then it'll do the thing. And if it isn't 0, then we know that that key has been pressed before, so we're just gonna not do anything. And as obviously when we let go of the key, it'll reset. So to actually get the keyboard input, we need to do if GetAsyncKeyState vKey up, and then we do this operator. Don't ask me what this is. If I can be asked to look it up before I make this video, I'll put it in the description, but just know that we need it. So essentially greater than and less than 0, then and since we want to make sure that the player only presses up once, we do and previous, yes, cry some more, and previous up key state is equal to 0, so essentially we haven't pressed it. Well, essentially we're not holding it down. Then we're going to do move up. I think this is throwing an error because we don't have a move, so I'm just going to quickly do private sub move direction. There we go. So is this, are you happy now? Oh, that's what you're angry about. Yeah, there we go. So essentially, whenever we press the up key and we're not holding it down, it'll essentially send the string to move, and assumedly we're going to change it so whenever you press up, we're going to move up. Just for the speed's sake, I'm just going to quickly copy the rest of these keys in. The only thing you need to worry about changing is just which step you need to do VB key and then whatever key you're using, so down, left, right. I haven't experimented with like ASD, stuff like that. I do know that if you try to do like F1 or F2, that might not work. So if you just keep it to like arrow keys or any like key on the keyboard, you should be fine. I think there's also like a list of like special keys you can use, like you can do like key enter or something. I'm not sure. This is just essentially to get you on your feet. So for now, we're only going to worry about up, down, left, and right. Then what we're going to do is in move, we're going to do, so this is essentially how, like, if you want to like move something, this is how you would do it. So you would do debug range. So we're getting a reference to the cell. We're going to do clear. And then we're going to do if direction is equal to string up, then we're going to do set debug range is equal to debug range dot offset. So what it was previously equal to, we're going to offset it by -1. So essentially we're going to move up. So if it was equal to 8, it's now going to be equal to 7. And then essentially it's the same for down. I'll just quickly copy that in. But since we only like, since essentially we don't want to have to like check through everything, we're just going to do else if direction is down, then we offset it by 1. This is essentially so when we get to this sub procedure or subroutine, as soon as we find what direction we're going into, we just say, all right, I don't care about checking with the other conditions. We only care that we've found what direction we're moving into, so we're going to move that and then disregard everything else. And then if you want to move left or right, so that's horizontal, you need to change this value by either 1 or -1. Thankfully it's because it might. I was worried that I'd have to like. Actually, no. For this one, I was worried I'd have to do like -a or something because it uses letters, not numbers. But thankfully, you can use integers. So just for the rest of them, left, then we're going to offset it by the y by -1, and right we're going to offset it by +1. And after all that, we're going to color it in again. Boom. And then everything should work right as rain. So then back in the modules, we have our class here. So now what we need to do is we need to, I'm checking over my notes. I actually didn't set my notes, but that's fine because I should remember. So what we're going to do is we're going to do private control process as control. Yeah, you see it's right there. Boom, perfect. And now we need to actually what should we call it? We need to actually assign it to something because again, this is an object, so whenever we declare it, it's going to be declared as nothing. So we need to do we're going to need to do set control process is equal to, and since this is a class, we're going to do new. Well, essentially, since we're instantiating it for the first time, we're going to do new control process. Yep, it works. And then we need to set it, so we're going to do control. I'm just going to quickly copy this. Control process dot. As you can see, it has all of our public sub processes. So we're going to do set game keys. So we set everything, and then in update, we're going to do control process dot check keys. So it's going to check essentially like every game tick, and then in quit. Actually, we're going to make this public. In quit, we're going to do control process dot reset keys. And hopefully everything should work fine. So over here we do this. There's our player. Whoops. Oh, I forgot to do. Sorry, I forgot to do. And if. Is that fine? Yep. Just gonna quickly indent this. Nah, it doesn't need indenting. All right. So, also whenever your program throws an error, just make sure you press this button to reset it, because if you try like clicking a button to start the game again, nothing will happen. So if you do this, and there we go, perfect. So as you can see, we can move our little goober perfectly with the arrow keys. And obviously, if you wanted to, you could just like set it to like whatever you want. Essentially, the basic like quick thing is you check for the key here, and you do then, and then whatever you want it set to. The only weird thing is that, that's right, hold on. So what you'll need to do is, I forgot to set it, hold on. What's that you need to do? Where is it? Is equal to, yeah, cry about it. Equal to this. So now, hopefully, when we hit play, petition, what is going on? There we go. So when we hit up, even though I'm holding it down, we can only move up once. Again, but for the other ones, it works fine. And again, I can just like tap it, it works fine, but if I hold it down, it will just only move up once. And obviously, like, there's a bit of like delay because we're only checking every 50 milliseconds if the player has like inputted something. So like, you know, like if you spam it too fast, it won't be able to reset in time. and you'll only be able to move like every like milliseconds, but as you can see, it works pretty damn well. So yeah, that's basically the basics of how to make a game in Excel. Obviously, to do like bounds, you are to like set up a game area, you would like first map it out, and then essentially you would check if the player, like if the player's cell range has exceeded the like lower bounds, and if so, you just say, hey, don't move anymore. Obviously, I haven't done that, so it's going to move right past, but yeah, you would essentially just check to see if the cell range is greater than for this case 20, or is greater than Z. I'm not sure what the syntax would be exactly, but you can probably search it up on your own. And yeah, that's the basics. I wish you all the best of luck for those of you who do decide to work with Excel. And I hope that this was of some use to you. Hopefully I wasn't just waffling for like 20 minutes or however long this tutorial will be. But yeah.